on location of your emergency?
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. She's not waking up. They saw some man in their house last night.
A haunting selfie emerges. Oh, there you go. Of Bryan Kohberger dressed like Ted Bundy. Now, why would the white bread boy from the Poconos dress like Ted Bundy and take eerie selfies? You know what? Before we even get to the news, I need a drink and a shrink. But sadly, I'm a teetotaler. So straight out to Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us. Bethany, why? Why is he all dressed like Ted Bundy for a series of selfies? He actually looks like he's the star in a slice and dice movie. What is this?
Dexter. You know, Nancy, this tells me that had he not been apprehended, he would have gone on to kill. If Ted Bundy is his idol, and Ted Bundy is a serial killer, killed men, killed women, had a completely deviant life, that this tells me that this was Bryan Kohberger's first rodeo, this first mass killing, and this was just practicing for all the killings to come. This is his idol. So he's going to form his entire offending pattern around his idol. This is more evidence that Bryan Kohberger should never, ever be let loose in society again.
I'm trying to figure out why Mr. Button-Down Oxford shirt is dressing like Ted Bundy and a selfie. This says something, Bethany, something deeper than I learned in law school. Why is he dressing up like Ted Bundy? It means something, for Pete's sake.
The first patient I ever saw as an intern, I was 25 years old, was a young woman who looked like Little Bo Peep from the waist up and like a hooker from the waist down. She had fishnet stockings, stiletto heels. She was a church secretary. And so she had this duality in her personality. And this is what I see in Bryan Kohberger. In fact, we call it a vertical split in my field, where one half of the person's personality could be deviant, naughty, counter society, maybe even homicidal. And the other part is sort of like a do-gooder. And the two sides are not integrated. They could go and give a birthday cake to grandma and celebrate grandma and then go rape the old lady next door. So it's very scary when you see these kinds of lack of integration with people who have certain types of pathology, because it tells you the deviant side could be so deep because it's hidden even from their own consciousness sometimes. Well, let's think of a vertical split as on one side is all the aspirational goodness, their families whom they rely upon. In the case of Bryan Kohberger, you know, teaching in a class, learning about law, you know, trying to flirt with women, but he was a family guy. He lived with his family for a long time. And then on the other side of the split, all the evil side. I mean, the church secretary that looked like Little Bo Peep from the waist up and a hooker from the waist down was having affairs with other pastors through the church computer, but she was the church greeter on Sunday morning. So it's the lack of integration, I think, in which these kinds of actions foment. So the BTK killer, you know, he would measure people's grasp.
The theory that Madison Mogan, may have been the intended target. And now we are now getting, which I'm about to get to, I'm leading up to it, information as to how we've heard all along. The prosecutors came out in open court and said we have no evidence that the victims were stalked on social media. Because remember, there was a lot of talk that Kohberger had stalked the victims. In that vein, it was believed for a long period of time that Kelly Gonsalves was the intended victim. It wasn't that the accepted theory at the get-go, Dave Mack, that somehow Kelly was the intended victim and the others were tangential. Now we're hearing that new information, Maddie Mogan may have been the killer's intended target.
Well, the first talking about targeting and who was the first one, that actually came from the Gonzalez family. You remember in the very early parts of the investigation, they were very public talking about the investigation and wanting information. And they were given certain information and that led them to believe and led them to say that Kaylee was the target in their mind's eye. That's what they saw. Now we're hearing that that may not be the case. Again, now we go back to the world of Joseph Scott Morgan, because I don't know how you can determine when you've got two young women in the same location, both being killed with a knife, how you determine who was killed first.
Now we must deduce, we must extrapolate based on what we know. Joining me is a renowned homicide investigator, Chris McDonough, director, Cold Case Foundation. Okay, Chris, go with me on this and jump in. So he gets invited to the pool party. I think the same pool party the neighbor invited him to, so he could make friends. All right. He's at the pool party. That night, July 9, begins his trips to where the murders occurred, the King Road murder scene. Then we find photos in his cell phone of women, girls, students in swimsuits. Were those girls at the pool party? Because now we learn, last step, that on social, the girls in the swimsuits were social media friends online with the victims. So all along we're like, how did he find these victims? How did he target them? Does it all go back to the innocent pool party? He's at the pool party. He sees women. He takes pictures of the women in their swimsuits. He looks them up online. He finds their online friends and targets them. That's
Right.
not
Like that.
just a coincidence. There is no coincidence in criminal law, McDonough.
Right. No, it's like the hunter who is trying to figure out where the deer hang out. He's a sadistic sexual predator. And it starts with finding your victimology. It starts with finding girls, if that's going to be his victimology. And then it's going to talk in his head, and I'm talking about fantasy, that he's going to tie it to his model. And who's his model? Well, right now, the evidence is showing that it could be Ted Bundy. And if that's the case, who was Ted Bundy stalking? He was stalking sorority girls. And now the very first murder, if Bryan Kohberger's your guy, he picks a house with 5 girls. And is the pool party connected? Well, we don't know yet, but we know he was organized. And we go back to the sheath for a moment. If Xana is the gal that walked up and disturbed him, that's probably the time he dropped the sheath. And that's when it went disorganized. And he probably, if in fact he chased her, that was the time. And that probably explains how the sheath got there in the first place. So is it past possibility? No, it's a probability. And it's also a probability that when he was taking that secondary selfie, that we're going to find a lot of information on that digital footprint of his phone. And it won't surprise me the type of porn that we find on that phone is going to be very sadistic.
Okay, that's doesn't really make any sense. So he's looking up porn, Dr. Bethany, non-consensual sex, rape, pornography.
That's right.
He's looking up rape porn. Okay, that's what that's called. He's looking up Ted Bundy. I mean, I've looked Ted Bundy up maybe, 1 million times. So, and he's a criminologist, so I'm okay with Ted Bundy search. But non-consensual rape porn, looking up porn where the woman, where the rape is, quote, forced, where the woman is passed out, drugged or sleeping. No. Help me out, Bethany. And then
Remember
these
the Max Factor
girls and Ethan are attacked in their sleep. What?
Yes. Remember the Max Factor error? He had that same deviant arousal pattern. He took all these videos of himself with women passed out in his bed, and he was making these creepy movements over them. So, Nancy, when somebody comes into my office who's had a brush with the law that there's an intersection between that and sex and assault, or they have a deviant arousal pattern, I always ask them, what type of pornography do you look at? And then who are you in the scenario or the vignette you're watching? Are you the passive person? Are you the active person? Are you the person who's watching? And it gives me a great deal of insight into the deviant arousal pattern. In this case, he needs his victims unaware of what he's doing. He wants to rape them when they don't know he's there. And or I'm guessing he wants to rape them. So is this the kind of person who could really graduate in his offending pattern to even more serious crimes like necrophilia, abuse of a corpse, something where the sex assault victim does not know that he's committing the crime, so he has complete power and control over them?